These free agency moves change everything. So we are officially into the offseason. The finals have come and gone, the draft has come and gone, and free agency has just started. And as we wrap up on this first week, there has been a lot of big moves that have happened. Players going to division rivals, big stars getting traded within the conference, teams sacrificing their team because they don't believe they're going to be competitive next year. I mean, this free agency has been a very memorable one. Although it hasn't been one of the best ones ever, like Shams was talking about, we can still acknowledge that this free agency period has been one that is very memorable. A lot of teams have made big moves for their teams, whether it be a good thing or whether it be a bad thing. And whether it be in the draft or signing on players, a lot of teams have done things to change the outlook of their future. Now, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the teams that are the biggest winners, because all of these teams can make moves, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they got better. But these teams, I truly believe, did an amazing job with building their team, not only with finding players who fit their team or players who just improve their situation, whether it be a good draft pick, whether it be a good signing, whether it leads them to championship contention, whether it puts them more so towards a true goal of to get the championship contention. These teams are definitely doing free agency right. So the first and the most obvious team that I don't really have to spend too much time on is the Rockets. Now, I made a video on the Rockets earlier, so if you want to check that video out, go ahead and check it out, talking about the Kevin Durant trade. But I think that's the first thing you have to start off with the Houston Rockets, the Kevin Durant trade. I mean, to be able to get Kevin Durant on your team was huge. We have been talking about Kevin Durant potentially going to the Rockets because the Rockets were a team that clearly struggled in the half court. It showed in the playoffs. It showed throughout the regular season. They struggled to get buckets. Jalen Green being their only real major offensive force on that side of the floor was not okay, because Jalen Green should never be your only threat on the offensive side of the floor. But he was. And to be able to get Kevin Durant on your team, a legit offensive threat next to Amen Thompson, who is a very good playmaker, and he's very young and he has a way to go, and Alperen Sengun and Morant, among other people, you get the Kevin Durant to kind of help. He's somebody who can finish plays, who can get buckets, who you can go to in a clutch time. All of these things are things that the Rockets needed. But what's more important and what's more impressive is what they gave up for him. I mean, only having to give up Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks and some picks is phenomenal, especially for a player like KD's caliber, who, although KD is old, although KD has his shortcomings, is still Kevin Durant, and he's still one of the best players in the NBA and one of the best players of all time. And even what we're talking about right now, he's still a pretty damn good player, if we're being honest. And adding him to a Rockets team, giving the Rockets basically exactly what they needed without having to sacrifice much, is good. You give away Jalen Green, who, let's be honest, they weren't really going to stick with Jalen Green that much anyway. They were probably going to move him, especially after the first round series he had versus the Warriors. And losing Dylan Brooks hurts, but it's okay. You have Kevin Durant. And then talking about other moves that they did, I really like the extension of Jabari Smith. I think Jabari Smith is a wonderful player. He's a winning player. He's a guy who knows what to do with the ball in his hands, and he has done a lot of things to play off of stars. We saw that. He's really quick with his decision making. He's really good at connective passing. Just a great extension. I know we've seen a lot of discourse about it on Twitter, but I personally like the extension. I don't think it's overpay. And think about it. The cap is going to be huge in a couple of years, and that money he's getting isn't going to mean anything. And they still have to pay Amen Thompson. So I think that's a good deal, and I think getting Clint Capella, although Clint Capella is definitely older, and he isn't the same Clint Capella that we knew, or the same Clint Capella that he was in the first iteration of the Rockets, Clint is still a pretty damn good player. You know what I'm saying? He's not going to be a starter. That's what you have Alperen Sengun and Steven Adams for. But Clint is a good player. He helps the Rockets get some flexibility and gives them a big to run off the bench. Now, the second biggest winner, although it is some stuff going on, is none other than the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets obviously made some big changes. They fired Calvin Booth, they fired Mark Malone, and going to the playoffs, they had an interim head coach and an interim GM. And then the GM came out and said some pretty questionable things, maybe alluding to trading Nikola Jokic. Who knows what he was getting at. But in the end, in this offseason, it's clear that they have made a valiant effort to build around Nikola Jokic. I mean, you get a shooter like Tim Hardaway Jr., you make that trade, although I know it hurt trading away Michael Porter Jr., you get a player in Cam Johnson who is younger, gives your team more flexibility, And he's a better player in my opinion. Although they equal out when it comes to shooting and handling and things of that nature, I think he's a better passer, and I think he has the slight edge on defense. But the main thing is that contract. I mean, having a contract while also getting the same value is always a plus, especially when you're a team like the Nuggets and you're trying to compete. And he's going to pair really well next to Jokic and Jamal Murray. And then also, like I said, getting Tim Hardaway Jr. and finally getting a backup center for Jokic and Jonas Valanciunas is huge. Now, I know we're hearing some things about Jonas Valanciunas possibly going overseas to Europe. Now, that would be very devastating, especially with the fact that he's owed a lot of money, and the Nuggets would then again have to go on a search for a center to back up Jokic. But we all know that Jokic can't handle those minutes and things of that nature. And I think eventually they shouldn't have too much trouble finding the center to back up Jokic. I know the free agency market has been kind of dry, especially recently, but I think they can find somebody. But even then, Jokic is a tank. He can play a lot of minutes. And the fact that Denver has done so much in this offseason to actually finally build around Jokic instead of being cheap and not letting go of Bruce Brown. They brought Bruce Brown back and not giving him shooters and players that can do things with the ball in their hands and all these different things. The fact that this offseason they're finally doing all of those things is very refreshing to see. And I think the Nuggets, a team who was already a contender and pushed the NBA champion OKC Thunder to 7 games, who knows? If they have a roster like this, especially after the regular season, they get to mesh and do all of these different things, who knows how scary the Nuggets could be, because Jokic, who's arguably the best player in the world, with a competent team around him, is very, very scary. And then the last team I really want to focus on is the obvious one. It's the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, I don't think any other team in every other facet of the offseason has truly won as big as the Atlanta Hawks. I made a video on the Atlanta Hawks earlier detailing more about their moves and the outlook I see for this team in the future, but I can go right back into it. I mean, the biggest thing that everyone is talking about is the fact that they got that unprotected pick for the Pelicans. And if you're a Pelicans fan, because I'm not, I sure as hell wouldn't love to be one, I would be very scared. A lot of the moves that's being made over there is very scary. But the fact that the Hawks were able to get that unprotected 2026 pick that looks and projects to be a top 10 pick because it's the worst out of the Bucks and the Pelicans is huge. It's a fleece. I don't even know why the Pelicans gave that up. So that's a huge thing because now you have some flexibility. But even talking about the moves they made to improve their team right now, you get a Kristaps Porzingis from the Celtics. It's a flyer. We get it. But if Kristaps is healthy, we're hearing that he finally got over his illness, so now he's just rehabbing to be the guy we know he can be. Kristaps is a legit player in the league. I mean, hey, do we not forget that in the small amount of time we saw him in the Celtics, he was good. And he can be really good for the Hawks in certain minutes and certain lineups. Not that saying he has to overtax himself or anything like that, but he's in a contract year, so even if he plays bad, good riddance. And you finally get off of Clint Capella, Clint Capella was good, but it was clearly his time to go. And you're replacing with an Ace Anul. The same pick that you trade away, the 22nd pick, you trade away to get Kristaps Porzingis, you still end up getting a guy who fits in really well with your team with the 23rd pick after making that trade with the Pelicans for the 13th pick. I mean, it really doesn't get any much better than that in terms of drafting. And then when it comes to signings, you get a Nickeil Alexander-Walker, which is obviously the big signing because now the Atlanta Hawks look like a legit team. You have a bunch of defenders around Trae Young. You have a bunch of all secondary handlers who can handle the ball when Trae Young is on the floor and isn't on the floor, because we saw last season Trae Young had a much better season as he was playing more off the ball, and that's one thing that we've been asking for. No more pick and rolls, Trae just coming off the pick and roll and finding who they're open. He's good at that, dissecting defenses. We all know that, but in order to actually be dynamic and be a good offense in the NBA and make it far in the playoffs, you have to have some complexity to your offense, and that just wasn't complex. So I'm very glad that they are finally getting some players to kind of fully fit this system by Quinn Snyder. And when Jalen Johnson comes back, the Hawks are going to look pretty scary. I mean, Nneka Okongwu, Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, Kristaps Porzingis, if Kobe Buffkin can take a leap. I mean, it's just a lot of things to really like about the Atlanta Hawks. And especially after the moves that they made in this free agency period, I have to give the Hawks as one of the winners and possibly the biggest winner. Now, there are some other smaller winners that I would like to highlight just mainly because of what they've done in the draft and even in terms of like re-signing guys. One of the teams being the Spurs. I mean, I think the Spurs, in terms of drafting and team building and making sure that they are keeping their culture and trying to set a standard, they have been phenomenal. You draft Dylan Harper, who best guard in the draft. I mean, left-handed Cade Cunningham, bro. That's all you need to know. Then you have Carter Bryant, who I don't know how he fell to you guys at 14, but he's one of the more perfect prospects to have next to a Victor Wembanyama and a Dylan Johnson. I mean, and a Dylan Harper. He's just a great prospect to have on your team, and to support these two players and a role player, as we saw in the tape at Arizona, play next to a Caleb Love, and he was really great in his role as a supporter, great as a defender, great as an off-ball player. So that's really good with terms of that. And on top of that, I like the fact that they didn't trade for KD, because they were really prioritizing on not trying to gut this team and force the timeline and speed up the timeline. Because once you get KD, you have to win now. You have to win today. But you don't get KD, you still have some leeway. Another team I'm going to highlight is the Charlotte Hornets. I think Charlotte has been a team for years and years and years that either is overlooked, isn't talked about much, or if we are looking at them, it's for the wrong reasons, whether it be LaMelo, Miles Bridges, other things that happen off the court. But this offseason, they did really well with drafting Liam McNeely. Ron Kalkbrenner in the second round is an absolute steal. You trade away Mark Williams and replace him immediately. And then you are able to get a Concanupple and a Liam McNeely as well. Two shooters. Concanupple, one of the most surefire bets in this entire draft. It's a great draft pick, and I think in terms of drafting, that is a phenomenal job of what to do with a team like the Hornets, who have struggled with drafting for a lot of the time that they've been in the NBA. So to finally get pieces next to LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller is really vital. And then bringing in a Trey Mann and also a Colin Sexton, although that guard room does feel kind of crowded now, it's good to have pieces. When you're a team like the Hornets, you know who your best player can be in LaMelo. You have an idea of who his supporting star can be in Brandon Miller. Now it's just about figuring out the right pieces to go alongside them. I really like Trey Mann. I was very sad to see him get injured, but I'm glad he got his money. And I'm curious to see what Colin Sexton can do, because now at this point he just has to prove that he is that he can provide some value to Charlotte in the way that they need it. You know what I'm saying? So those are two other winners that I would love to highlight, because I think when it comes to drafting, they have put on a show. But, I mean, outside of these teams, there are some winners that you can mention. If I didn't mention, make sure you leave them down below in the comments of who I might have forgot. But these are my main winners. Free agency has started, and trust me, we have a long way to go. We're already hearing rumors about other moves that could be made, but as of right now, here are my biggest winners of free agency. If you agree, if you disagree, if you have other options, if you have other people you want to say, make sure you leave them down below in the comments. But that's all I got for now. Until next time, peace.